Okay, well here it is then, the new Innov 1080p HD action camera. This is made by a spin-off company from the company that made the HD 261080 keychain cam. Obviously very different to the keychain cam, completely different case design, different function buttons, lovely brushed aluminium case of a shape that would be easier to mount because it's flat. Okay, let's have a look at the operation of this. First off, there are three function buttons on the top here. Power, on, off. To turn the camera on, hold the button for 3 seconds. LED light comes on. Mode function button, which scrolls it through 3 or 4 modes, which I'll tell you about in a second. And the shutter button, which obviously either starts the video rolling or takes a still for you. A slide switch here which changes the function from loop recording, which is what you'd need for dash cam mount use, continuous recording, that's the right hand position, or continuous recording with the LED night light on. Okay, now in a bit more detail, the camera records at 1080 HD 30 frames a second or 720 60 frames a second. Pressing this button here, you'll scroll through the various modes and the LED changes colour. Basically it goes through 4 modes. First one, video mode, 720 60 frames a second, 1080 30 frames a second. The default when you fire it up, when you take it out of the box, is auto record on power up and 1080 30 frames a second. By using one of the 2 GUIs that you can download, you can change the default so that it actually starts in 720 60 frames a second, which is what mine's doing at the moment, which is green light. As I say, next press of the button will be red LED, which is 1080 30 frames a second. Next press of the button is stills mode. You can select whether you want 3 megapixel, 2 or 1 if I recall correctly. Third one, G sensor mode, or parking mode, so that when it's mounted in the car, if there's a shock to the vehicle, it will actually start videoing, hopefully, and record whoever's smacked into your car. That's providing, of course, it's looking the right way. But this is the C1. There's a new model, the C2. I think it's $10 more expensive, but with a slightly wider lens to give you more chance of catching the culprit who's whacked into your car. And of course, loop recording is for when it's used as a dash cam and mounted inside the car with a special cable so that it starts recording when you fire up. Now in use, once you've fired it up, as I say, mine starts in default 720 60 frames a second. Press the shutter button. The LED is now flashing green, showing you that it's actually recording. LED is quite visible, certainly better than the old keychain cams. I could just about see it in bright sunlight, but in this kind of light, no problem at all. Press it again, camera off. Press the mode button again. I'm in 1080 30 frames a second, default. Press the button again, it's in stills mode. So press the shutter, takes one still. Press it again, does a couple of little flashes to say it's taken a photograph. Press the mode button again, it's flashing green and red, which shows it's in G sensor mode. Press it again, I'm back into 720 60 frames a second. Okay, let's go a bit more detail about some of the other operation of this. Microcard slot, that's kind of standard microcard. One nice thing about this is they've actually put a little illustration on here to show you which way up the card goes. The old keychain cams had no indicator at all and people sometimes lost their cards inside, but this one actually goes in upside down. Comes with a USB type charging lead, which also allows you to look at the files, plug it into the computer, turn the camera on, and it will see this as an external drive, so you can take the files off. The plug they've used on the camera is not the standard micro USB. It's actually a specific camera plug for Canon, if I recall correctly. But having said that, it's not necessarily interchangeable with a Canon plug. I think it's wired just for this camera, so one needs to be careful to label this cable and not mix it up or lose it. In fact, probably worth getting a second cable. The slide switch, yeah, that's fairly straightforward. Like I say, I've just got it on continuous record. I got 1 hour 49 minutes recording time from a fully charged battery, which was 10.62 gigabytes. You can work roughly on 3.9 or say 4 gigs for 40 minutes. Once it gets to 3.99 gigabytes, which is about 41 minutes, the camera stops and saves the file, and it doesn't restart. At 720, 60 frames a second, the camera got warm but not hot, and at 1080 with continuous running, it was similarly just a bit warm but certainly not hot. Charge time, I'd say well over 2 hours to charge from a completely flat battery. It comes packaged in a nice little cardboard box, unlike the old keychain cams that used to mostly arrive in a bubble wrap bag. The box has the instruction leaflet, which is pretty comprehensive. It explains the modes as I've just mentioned, the use of the AV cable, which I should just say is an optional extra. With the AV lead you can view the footage in playback mode directly on your TV screen. It explains the function keys, mode button, webcam mode, the LED functions. Basically, I mean, the camera works fine straight out of the box. On power up, it auto records at 1080. So if you don't want to mess around with GUIs, no problem at all. The wide angle lens is quite a nice width from my point of view for action. I mean, I paraglide. I tend to mount it on a bracket on my chin. I find that's quite a nice angle. On the subject of mounts, there is an optional extra little mount like so that it clips into. It came with a lanyard, and my understanding is that you should attach the lanyard to this so that you can hang it around your neck if you want. Handlebar mount with a nice tripod thingy, also optional extra for clamping on, blah blah blah, like so. This is the kind of official helmet mount, which again has got a tripod mount here and is designed to strap onto the side of a helmet, and it will crank up and down to wherever you want, angles wise, like so. Okay, so this is the GUI that's downloadable from the Innov website. Pretty easy to use. Plug the camera in to the PC with the USB cable. Create the configuration that you want just by ticking whichever little boxes. Click on Create Configuration File, and then turn on the camera. Locate the camera as a removable disk, and where it says Save Card, just copy it to the card in the camera. Unplug the camera, it will turn off. Turn it on again, and it would load the bin file that's just been created and change your settings. Very slightly more difficult to use than the 2KZ version, but one advantage is this also will update the time on the camera. The second GUI is downloadable from RC groups, slightly easier to use, as I say, much the same, just a question of creating the configuration you want, turn the camera on and click on Save to Camera. Unplug, turn it on again, and again it will load your new configurations. Disadvantage of as far as I can see, the 2KZ version is that it does not update the date time, so you will then need to make a little text file in your notepad. The format is shown on the instruction leaflet. Copy the text file to the camera's microcard, turn the camera on, and that will change the time. So use whichever GUI you like. Advantages and disadvantages. Not sure if I mentioned the GUI shows a function which they call time lapse. I think this is actually a timer delay for when you're taking stills. A 5-second setting on there. You fire the shutter, it waits 5 seconds and then takes a single still. Also not quite sure what motion detect means. I tried it in motion detect enabled mode, waved my hands around in front of it when it was on standby, and it didn't seem to fire up. This might be a bug, but no doubt the developers will sort it because they are actively participating in discussion and bug fixing on RC Group's thread, which is linked down in my comments. Okay, so here is the test footage. I recorded at 1080 and 720, but my video is actually made in 720. If you want to see some raw 1080, I will endeavour to link it somewhere on a cloud SkyDrive. There's no change in frame view whether you're using 1080 or 720. This is a test to see how well it responds to changes in light. So point at the sky and point down. Point at the sky, point down. So let's see how it performs in low light.
Yeah.
Cheers.
I want them Brixham Harbour and Brixham Town. Right, now this is at 720, 60 frames a second. 720, 60 frames a second. That's really what I'm videoing. I think it's really discreet. You're not supposed to mention that. I guess you're getting the shopping for the Christmas party.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Okay, well, finally the sun's come out today. So here is a last clip with the latest firmware
with the saturation set high on daylight mode, and this is at 720. Did I say that? So let's see how that looks. Pointing to the sky, which is very pale at the moment. Bring it down. See how quickly it adjusts to different levels of light. Back up, back down, round into the sun, and into the shadows.
Field of view at 1080 video, and this is to show the field of view at 720, just to show really that there is no difference at all in the field of view. And finally a still showing the field of view in still mode. Okay, so my conclusions: nicely made little camera and very easy to use with a decent lens. One or two firmware issues still, but new firmware is coming out all the time, and I've no doubt, given a couple of firmware upgrades, it'll turn out to be a really good little camera.